Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September Cabinet. We have apologies for absence from County Councillor Beavers. And just want to ask anyone got any disclosure of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest? No? So item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of July. Are we able to agree those minutes? Proposer, seconder. Thank you. So we move on to item 4, which is the annual reports of the County Council champions and the former champions. So it's my pleasure to bring these annual reports before Cabinet. As you know, we've currently got 6 champion roles: armed forces and veterans, disabled people, mental health, older people, parishes and young people. The champion for mental health was a newly established role last year, in the latter part of the year. I think we'd all agree that each champion performs a really important role in supporting the work of Cabinet, raising awareness, helping us to shape policy, as well as providing hands-on support for community groups across the county. Obviously, 2021 was a really unusual year for all of us because of the pandemic, and this necessarily impacted on the work of the champions. Many community-based organisations weren't able to function as they would have normally, and the champions themselves were unable to get out and about at certain parts of the year in their roles as much as they would have wished to, but they all tried their best. And as you can see from the reports, their valuable work did carry on throughout the year, and organisations were supported. I know for the coming year, the champions are very active already, and I just want to assure Cabinet and anybody who's listening in, really, that we will be giving those champions the opportunity to showcase their work that they're doing more widely as we go through. It's really interesting, some of it, but it's really valuable and well received. So I'm sure you'd all agree that we ought to thank each of the champions for their work and the support of the council. 2 of the champions didn't seek re-election in May, and I would like to put on record the work of County Councillors David Foxcroft and Peter Sheen, who for several years, each of them carried out their roles with great commitment and energy, and that was really appreciated by us all here, and also the communities they supported. So Cabinet is asked to receive the annual reports of the champions and former champions as set out in the appendices. Anybody want to add anything or just add their support? Michael.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to echo your comments, really, and I think the work that they do, sometimes we don't always see the value of it. But when you speak to some of the groups out and about in the communities across our county, that's when you actually see the value that they do add in these roles. So credit to each and every one of them, as you say, particularly to the 2 who didn't seek re-election, but to all of them, and all power to them moving forwards, and look forward to working with them in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will now move on to item 5, which is money matters, and County Councillor Vincent's going to present that item.
Thank you, Leader. I don't have a great deal more to say this time than I did last time, really. There's very little difference in that. Currently, we don't have enough data to alter the forecast for the structural deficit. So we have to take the same figure that we had previously because of that lack of data. And the increase in the figure going forward is just because we've gone a year forward. So the extra 14 million on the structural deficit is because of that additional year being counted in. The real-time figures for the first quarter's forecast, however, is an underspend of 5.219 million, which obviously in normal times I would be saying, whoopee, that's great. What a fantastic result, because going forward we can anticipate that will be repeated through the year and we'll end up with 20 million more than we expected. But that is not the case this time. That's too simple an approach, simply because if you look at the figures behind the figures, which are in the report, they're all over the place. We have overspends in some areas, underspends in other areas. adults are overspent, children's are significantly underspent. This time there is a 2.7 million overspend on highways, but that tends to be, I think that's catch up from last year to a certain extent when the figure was underspent because of the pandemic. And we've had 3 million from Treasury Management, who we can always rely on to come out with a figure for us. So it's a very mixed scenario, and so mixed that we can't pin it down at this stage. It's too soon to do that. Obviously, we're monitoring the figures on a very regular basis and scrutinising what's going on. As soon as we have a clearer picture, then obviously we can start working on what will be a real figure, if you like. And I'm not saying this is an unreal figure, but it just seems unreal because of the situation that we found ourselves in. Because there are some areas where you wouldn't expect to have additional spending. We've had it, and in other areas where you wouldn't expect to have an underspend, we've had that too. So, yeah, it's very difficult to make a forecast. But what I will say is, so far so good. And it looks as if we can get back on track. I'm confident that we will deliver the savings, but we're not going to deliver savings as quickly as we initially intended because of the pandemic. It's as simple as that. The system, the delivery system for those savings has been interrupted by the pandemic, and it's not likely that we'll get it back on track anytime soon. So it may be the end of the year before we start to see a real indicator of where we're going and how we're doing.
Okay, anybody got any comments, questions that they want to raise at this stage? I think the report says it all. It's steady as we go, really, in the circumstances, which are quite difficult. Okay, so we move on to item 6, the procurement report, which is also Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Leader. We have 5 items on there. The first is Boost Business. I think it's fairly straightforward. If anyone has any questions for, I think Councillor Biggott would probably be the one to ask them to. It's a very useful tool for this council, and going forward, fortunately, we've got additional funding to carry it on, to keep it going. And this is the procurement for that amount, the spending of that cash. The second item is occupational health, and again, that's for our in-house occupational health service. I think it's fairly clear what that's about. Third item is Ormskirk Eastern Gateway, and this is something of an innovative project, and is an example of how ourselves and a district authority can be benefited by working together and by dipping into different pots of money that are available to us. So this seems to me to be a particularly good scheme. Again, if there are any comments, I'm happy to take them. And the other 2 are in relation to equipment purchases.
Okay. Anybody want to raise any points? No? So happy to endorse the report. So item 7, and this is County Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Leader. So good afternoon, colleagues. Item number 7 is pretty straightforward. We're going to be proposing some double yellow lines on 2 roads, Elker Lane and Elker Meadows, which is a new development in Billington in the Ribble Valley. It's a short road, about 120 metres in length, and the restrictions are done on a section by section basis rather than across the whole road, so that there are opportunities to park, but in a way that doesn't inundate the whole road with parking. One of the reasons why we've done that is to future-proof this development, because there will be further developments taking place in that area. This isn't a cost to the County Council. The cost of this is going to be met by the developer, and consultation has been carried out with the developer, the Parish Council and the police, and they're all happy. I'd like to put on record my thanks to County Councillor Alan Schofield for his work on bringing this to the attention of the County Council. Yeah, I'd be grateful if colleagues could approve.
Thank you. Any questions, points for anyone to raise? No? We're happy to approve that. Thank you. To item 8, which is also County Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. So this one is it's a bit more beefy. There's quite a lot in this report, and there's a little bit for everybody. So what I'll do is I'll just take each of the items in turn, and if anyone's got any questions, then I'm happy to stop at any point. So I'll start with the there's going to be an introduction in Fulwood and in Cleveleys for a number of prohibition of U-turns, so signs where there'll be no U-turns in certain on 2 roads. These are quite simple and quite popular measures. There is a weight restriction. This is probably the one that attracted the most attention. There is an existing weight restriction across parts of Wyre in and around kind of Barton, Billsborough, Myerscough kind of area, St Michael's. This was a weight restriction was put in 1996, and the purpose of the weight restriction is obviously to try and encourage the HGV traffic onto the main roads and to keep the rural roads for access only. And we've had a request from the police that rather than we just say, right, this area needs to be covered by a weight restriction, they actually want us to individually name each of the roads, which is what we've done. Again, there was only one. There's a number of people who raised objections and concerns to this, and the concern is very right, and that is, can I still have access to my farm or to my business? And the answer is, with all of these weight restrictions, that access is always granted in these areas. And another reason why, obviously, we want to encourage HGVs onto the main roads is because we want to improve and ensure the quality of the condition of rural roads. And this is something that we as an administration are particularly keen on, is ensuring that we invest into the quality of our rural roads. And it's something that you'll be hearing us talk a lot more about as time goes by. There is a number of there's a couple more changes that are being made. One is in Burnley. There was a weight restriction on a bridge, which the weight restriction was put in as a temporary measure because the bridge couldn't hold the weight, and LCC's teams have managed to correct the fault on the bridge. And so as a result, we don't need the weight restriction anymore because the bridge is stronger, so we can have the traffic going back on. So that's quite a simple one. And then there's another one in Preston City, which is that was a duplication of a previous order. So that's, again, just a tidying up exercise. One more, which is a one-way restriction along Church Street in Ormskirk, and that is part of the emerging Ormskirk Eastern Gateway. And I'm grateful to my colleague Alan Vincent for raising Ormskirk Eastern Gateway in his previous item, because that is going to prove to be a real great success of collaboration between us and districts and other partners. So pretty standard, really.
Okay. Quite comprehensive and important things to people locally. So everybody happy to support those? Thank you. Right, so move on to item 9, which again is Councillor Edwards and Penwitham to Preston Cycle Superhighway.
This is item 3 out of 4 for me. We're doing all right today. So Penwitham to Preston Cycle Superhighway. So this is a scheme that has been in the offing for a good number of years, and it was very much enabled by the Penwitham Bypass project. It has been mooted. It was in our active travel strategy that was signed off by Cabinet in 2018 about putting in a project of this nature. And at the finish of the Penwitham Bypass, the timing, it worked out that the timing worked well because there was the active travel funds that came in after during COVID, and this council was successful in its bids to create a £2.2 million project, which is the Cycle Superhighway. There was an initial plan that was published, and in that plan there was a suggested no right turn going into Kingsway, which is as you're coming off into Penwitham, it's the first road on the right. There was a suggestion about closing that road off. I think there was a belief that it would just encourage more. It would just encourage the safety of the flow of cyclists. So you can understand where the designers were coming from. However, once that went out to public consultation, it was very clear that we received loud and clear feedback that this was not going to be a feasible option for residents. We had a survey that came back from the MP, Catherine Fletcher, and I'd like to thank Catherine and her team for the work that they've put into providing us with a really clear and succinct understanding of the feedback from residents on this issue. And we instructed the teams to go away and redesign that element of the scheme and taking on board the concerns of residents. So what you have in front of you, colleagues, is the redesigned cycle superhighway scheme, where you can turn right down Kingsway. However, part of the funding criteria for the Department of Transport is that it does need to substantially alter the highway in order for it to be a successful active travel project. So as a result, there will be a number of changes that will take place. There'll be a raised hump that will make it on the Kingsway junction. It will just make it safer, better for cyclists, pedestrians, and it will overall increase the ability for people in Penwortham to enjoy and safer and more secure village and the cafe culture that we're trying to promote in Penwortham. So it's great for Penwortham, and yeah, we've taken on board the concerns of residents, and we will continue to do so in the future.
Thank you. It's very helpful. So I've got two people question. County Councillor Arley.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Charlie. Obviously, welcome the investment resulting from the Penwortham bypass. There was a massive uproar, as you said, from local people and businesses about proposals for a one-way system. Delighted that People Power has won and the council has listened, rejected the one-way system. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch.
Yes, it's not my division, but I have been asked about one aspect of the development, and that's the change of Liverpool Road from a 4-lane dual carriageway with a right turn into an undivided carriageway with one each way. The concern raised was that when traffic going up the hill westbound has to stop and wait its turn to turn right into Kingsway, traffic could build up behind that if no one can get past, and including 4 bus routes. So I wonder, is it big enough, or any measures been taken to see if the road still will be passable as people wait to turn right?
Thank you both for your comments, and I think Councillor Gooch, your question is really pertinent. So, if you this is exactly a point that we've raised with the officers and with the design team. The road is going to be a very wide single carriageway, and so that anyone who is queuing up to turn right, it will be a lot like the A6 in Fulwood, where you'll be able to merge out to continue your route. So there will be able to be a good traffic flow in Penwortham. We've already liaised with bus operators, and they say they are happy with the new plans to be able to continue to have reliable bus services as well. It's a really good point, and it's one that we will be monitoring.
Thank you. Any other questions? Points? No. In which case, are we happy to support the recommendation? Thank you. Microphone switched itself off there. So we move on to item 10, which is the last of Councillor Edwards' papers today, which is the Transport Asset Management Plan.
Thank you, Leader. So this is really, I think, the most important document that I'm going to be presenting today. And it's very interesting reading, and it's something that I would implore that if you're interested in highways, that you should read the Transport Asset Management Plan. The way in which Lancashire County Council invests in its highways network is done on a far more scientific basis than it had been done in the past. The way in which we invest in our roads is based on prioritising them, based on the condition of the road, obviously, how, has it deteriorated, anything like that? Are there potholes on the road? Is there any problems with it? But also, is it near a school? Is it near residences? Is it near areas of employment? The way in which we categorise and classify the roads is done in such a way, and that we make sure that the funding that we have, the very limited amount of funding that we have, is spent as to benefit the most residents across Lancashire every year. And that forms our capital programme for the year. And this document here really does identifies the state of the roads as a result of that capital investment every year. Page 179, Appendix A, is one of the most fascinating tables you will see. For a highways geek, it's my favourite thing to see. And it's a shame that this table doesn't actually include the data from when we first got elected in 2017, where there were oranges and reds across the board. What you can now see is that in the A road category, there is less than 1.5% of roads in a red state. So classify it green, amber and red, 5 grades altogether. You'll see that the B roads, there's a massive amount of A, B and C roads that are now in a good or excellent condition. And that is a result of 8 years of this scientific approach, and it's something that we will want to continue moving forward. And as a result, because we have now got to the point where we are going strong with the ABC roads, we're now going to focus on those residential and rural unclassified roads, and start to see that number of the quality of those roads increase. And that's going to be one of the priorities of this administration over the next 3.5 years, is to have that number decrease on those residential and rural roads, improve and invest in the quality of our roads across Lancashire, but done in a way that's fair and that benefits as many residents as possible with the money that we've got.
Anybody want to raise any questions about that? Apart from to comment on the good progress made over a good and well done. Okay, happy to approve the recommendations.
Please.
Okay, so we move on to item 11, which is County Council of Cosmo Townley and the Corporate Parenting Board.
Thank you, Leader. It's a very simple item. It is just bringing the revised terms of reference from the Corporate Parenting Board. The report speaks for itself, and I'll let that lie unless there are any other questions or queries from members.
Happy to approve those, everybody? Yep, excellent, thank you. So, County Councillor Rear, item 12, Department of Education Schools Rebuilding Programme.
Thank you, Leader, and good afternoon, everyone. This paper has been brought to us today. It's a good news story. The DFE have invited schools to apply for funds to rebuild some more parts of their schools, and Lancashire have been fortunate enough to have been chosen to benefit from 3 schemes in this current round, and hopefully 2 in further rounds. And given that there's only 100 schools across the whole of the UK, well, England, then I think that's a really good thing. With the 3 schools in the first tranche are Tarleton, which is an academy, Lytham, which is Lytham High School, which is a foundation trust, and Whitworth High School, which is a maintained school for LCC. So it's fairly straightforward, really. All the finances and are held with the DFE. The reason the paper has come to us today is the 3rd recommendation covers us for any unforeseen matters that come to our attention that during the course of the programme might require an unexpected decision, but apart from that, it's quite straightforward. Thank you. County Councillor Ali.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jane, for that. Welcome, obviously, the investment in the schools rebuilding programme and the schools that you highlighted. Did have some concerns raised to me about Whitworth High School and the rebuilding programme. I think it went through Rosendale Council's planning recently, last month, but there were concerns from local councillors and residents that no additional capacity has been built into that school, because a lot of children from Rochdale actually go to Whitworth, and some of the kids in Whitworth actually don't get to go to that particular school, and that maybe it was a missed opportunity. That additional capacity could have been built in for future-proofing education in the Whitworth area.
Councillor Rea, do you want to comment on that?
Chair,
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
I understand that. I would have thought this would be a great opportunity to actually review Rosendale's school places situation. And if there is a capacity issue at this school, it would have made a lot of sense to do it together in one go. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure County Councillor Rea will consider that point when we're looking at school numbers, working with the team about that. But it's good to see some investment coming into the fabric of our schools, and we must welcome that. Is everybody happy to endorse the recommendations? Thank you. Item 13. Councillor Rea.
In Cabinet in October 2020. It is there to address the unsustainable budget pressures for STEM placements across the county, by providing more local provision across the whole of the county. It's achieved by expansion of 2 existing schools, which are Sir Tom Finney and Broadfield Special School, and the capital investment from that totaled around 10 million. It also requested at the time to consult for 10 SEND units on mainstream sites, 6 secondary and 6 primary. And the first part of the report is to consider the results of the former consent statutory. I can't speak, I should have had a glass of water. To create the SEND units within the schools outlined in the paper. The second part of the paper is to approve a feasibility study for some further schools that are again outlined in the paper. Then there's a lot going on this paper. Then thirdly, we're asked to approve the initiation of a process to seek expressions of interest to expand and increase the number of special school places through the creation of special school satellite provision in different locations across the county. So in this particular one, the children will remain on roll at their special school, but may have provision provided maybe closer to home and on sites that can have the space to accommodate them in mainstream schools as well. So it will give those children, some of the children in special schools, the opportunity to be part of mainstream as well. Following that, we're also asked to approve the initiation of a formal consultation to expand and increase the number of special school sorry, I've done that one. The satellite units. So after that, we are asked to approve the consultation to establish a new free school in the county, where it's identified that we need spaces for SEND, and so that is to go out to consultation and invite offers for people that are interested in creating a free school. And last but not least, we're seeking approval to initiate a feasibility study for the consultation to expand and increase the numbers of school places at Red Marsh School and or other local schools should the Red Marsh site not be as suitable because it's quite tight on space. And that's it. There's lots of things.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Ali.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Jane. Obviously welcome the investment. I mean, it's something that I think all parties have been trying to move forward over the last few years. So thank you for that. However, just got a query on page 197, first paragraph. There's a list of schools where you've asked Cabinet to consider formal consultations following the publication of statutory proposals, etc. One of the schools on there is Wolverton Primary School, which is in my division, and it's a school that's landlocked, and it's an area where there's a primary school where there's a shortage, and there's waiting lists at that school and nearby school primary schools, and I welcome the SEN places, but I can't understand when I've spoken to officers that they say that there's no additional primary school places in the area, but we can find the money for SEN places at that same school. And wouldn't it have been better to just pause on that one school and look at what the county can do around primary school places, because there's a huge shortage and demand, and kids we're paying for taxis to take kids elsewhere, and just to sort of go ahead with the decision, but at least pause on that one just to revisit it, because there's a massive problem there.
Okay. Does someone want to respond to that, Jane, or?
Yeah, to come back on that, the pupil place planning for our mainstream young people is done looking at obviously the patterns in population growth and migrant families coming into the community, and this was considered alongside our development of SEN units. So in this instance, obviously what we've looked at is the considerable spend, and obviously the fact that it's not appropriate for our young people to be placed sometimes outside of their community. So on balance of both of those considerations, it made more sense to invest in a SEND unit at Wolverton. But I take on board your points, and obviously I'll feed those back to our pupil place planning team in their future considerations.
Okay, Councillor.
I think the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, unfortunately. I just think there's different departments aren't talking to each other. And this has not been an issue that I've just raised today. This has been an ongoing issue. And I think you remember we spoke just before the elections around school places in Pendle. There's a report about secondary schools, which we'll come to. But there's a major problem around primary schools in certain towns. And it doesn't make sense that, we don't think it's appropriate when numbers are going up. We, as an authority, look at birth rates rather than necessarily national insurance number that's been issued in the area due to migration and other factors. And that's not reflecting itself in the reports that are coming to the Cabinet. I know it's not my decision, it's the Cabinet's decision. However, I just think some of this is misleading. And I say that with a lot of caution, but it is misleading because it doesn't make sense what's happening in reality on the ground in Nelson and what officers are presenting to Cabinet. And I'm happy to talk to Jane and yourself outside of this meeting, but it's not comfortable reading this report when for the last couple of years councillors from Burnley and Pendle have been raising these issues and none of that's been taken into account.
Okay, Jane, do you want to comment?
But we'll happily get together and have a chat about it.
Okay. So outside of that, and we will follow up on those points that are well made. There's no problem with that. I mean, I think generally all of us would say that it's good to see, on general terms, this level of investment, which I know County Councillor Ali has also acknowledged, the level of investment in special educational needs in our children and young people across the council. So is everybody happy to accept the recommendations? So we'll now move on to item 14, which is on additional primary school places in Clitheroe.
Thank you. This is to move on from the Cabinet decision in the 21st of June. We asked for a consultation to take place to extend the age range of Ribblesdale High School. That consultation is now concluded, and we'd like to have your permission to move on to the statutory stage of the consultation process.
Anybody got any points to raise? No, I mean, I know these additional school places are really welcomed in and around Clitheroe for more parties, so it's important to have families. So is everybody happy to accept that recommendation? Thank you. 15.
Lancashire agreed syllabus for religious education. This has to come to Cabinet as part of a rolling programme. SACRE are the SACRE advised the local authority about religious education in our maintained and voluntary aided schools. So it's a programme of religious education covering various different religions along the stages of primary and secondary life. And it's a brilliant document. There's nothing else I can say about it. It's absolutely excellent. And there's a lot of teamwork that goes into it over, I think it's every 4 or 5 years that this is redone, and they have done an absolutely terrific amount of work on this to bring it up to date. I had a look at their website and it's absolutely full of lovely resources, and the good news about this is that Lancashire can sell this product to lots of different authorities across the whole of England, so it's used by counties in the south even, so there we are. Good news.
Anyone got to raise any points, comments? Absolutely right. It is an excellent document, and as you say, well recognised as so, the work that goes into it across the country. So well done to everybody who's involved. Everyone happy to accept that recommendation? Thank you. So the final item on education skills is item 16, Pendle Secondary School Provision 2022. It's Councillor Rear as well.
This one is to approve a temporary increase for 1 year only in the admission number to Colne Primate Academy in Pendle from 165 to 210 places for 2022, and to St John Fisher and Thomas More Roman Catholic School from 160 to 160 to 180 places for this 1 year only, and then from there on to a permanent increase in the admission number for each of those schools.
Okay, anybody got any points? Councillor Rowling.
First of all, thank you very much for this. I mean, we've spoken about this previously, and this has been going on for a number of years because of high migration numbers from Europe. There's a need for more primary school and secondary school places. This year, I know there's been a huge number of appeals for schools, and I think for the next couple of years, it gives a really positive signal to parents that there will be places available at Colne Primate Academy and at Fishermore, which are both excellent schools. The one thing which I would like to raise, Chair, is around this current year, 2021. Again, obviously there's a shortage, and West Craven High School has places available, but West Craven from Nelson and Bradford is around 10 miles, and some parents in Burnley have been allocated West Craven High School, who've been in touch with me and other local county councillors, and have appealed, and obviously appeals have failed. But there's a real problem with transport. We're suggesting that we pay for bus passes, but for some kids it's changing 2 buses, and they would have to leave sometimes. One parent said to me at 6:30 in the morning to get there on time because where they live. Now, I think that's unacceptable. There is an easy solution to this, and I have written to the Executive Director, Edwina Grant, who's passed it on to I think it's Oliver Starkey or somebody, which is to, in temporarily, because there's a lot of parents who are migrants and do not speak English, have no transport, and they've got concerns over kids' safety, is to look at a temporary in minibuses or some sort of transport, which gives reassurance to parents that the kids will be safe and get there on time. I'm just wondering whether Jane will look into that urgently. Otherwise, we're going to have quite a few kids, significant number of kids who will not go to that school and wait for future people to leave other schools. So there's places available, and that's not going to happen either.
Okay, Jane. Thank you. So everyone happy to, other than that, no more questions? Anyone happy to accept the recommendations? Thank you. So if we now move on to item 17, it's County Councillor Turner.
Yep.
Electric vehicles.
Yes, so there's 2 items. Obviously, the first one relates to new charging infrastructure for the County Council. This underscores our commitment to net zero carbon emissions and more to the point to zero tailpipe emissions. So the total figure for this and the next item is about £3 million, just short of, and it was set aside at the end of the last financial year and put into reserves, and now obviously it's a capital investment in getting the charging set up in the offices and depots where the vehicles will use them and be able to either park there or travel to there and charge the car. So that's the first item.
Questions on item 17 or any comments that anybody wants to make? No, other than to say that it's a great thing to be happening. Anybody got anything? No? Are we happy to accept that recommendation? Excellent. To 18.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So, this follows on from that. They're almost back to front in one sense, in that you're putting them in and you haven't got the cars, although we have already got some vans. And the reason this isn't us being slow to react, obviously, we had to wait for the vehicles to be able to satisfy our service fleet, really, so that they could travel far enough. And those type of vehicles are increasingly coming into the market. So we have some vans already. The parking services team is coming back in-house in September. So we're looking at the moment at procuring some vehicles for that service. So going forward, this is something we're going to be increasingly looking at, and it also adds to the battery-powered equipment we're using out there in the field in terms of still saws and trimmers and hedge trimmers, that sort of thing. So it's all aimed at reaching carbon net zero. So really good news story. Really pleased to see this happening.
Anybody want to raise anything? Happy to support. So, item 19 is County Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, this is a continuation of a number of policy reviews that have been undertaken in the Cultural Services Department. This one's a review of its collection management and development policy. It was last looked at in 2012. So officers have just looked through it, and it speaks for itself in the appendix, and I ask Cabinet to approve this policy document. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Anything anyone wants to ask questions? Happy to support? Thank you. Okay, so item 20 is urgent decisions taken between the last Cabinet meeting and this one, and there are two listed there, and I'll just invite Cabinet members to comment on those. The first one's the future of Queen Street Mill Museum and Helmshire Textile Mills Museum, which is Councillor Buckley.
Yes, thank you. This was our continuation work with the National Trust. The reason why it was an urgent decision is because there was a funding bid and there was a time table associated with that, and with Cabinet postponed or cancelled last month, then we needed to do that urgent decision. The good news is that the Queen Street Mill, in fact all our museums have reopened after COVID, and I'm pleased to have seen Councillor Townley reopen or relight the boiler at Queen Street Mill, and there was a sort of the re-steaming of it. So that was excellent to see after many years of it being out of action. So that was great. So thank you for doing that, and long may that continue. Thank you.
Great pleasure, Leader. Great pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, so on the second item, Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Home to School Transport Policy Update, I was just going to ask Laura Sales to comment on that one.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I can't obviously comment on the policy, but I would like to perhaps comment on the reasons for its urgency. And just to say that school transport policies are inextricably linked to the admissions process. And any changes to one has to reopen the admissions policy. So they're absolutely time critical for our officers and our schools, and of course for parents. And so they're obviously also timed so that we can start the admissions process and complete it before the beginning of the school year. So as I say, they are extremely time critical. This draft policy originally came to Cabinet in June, and I believe it was debated at the time in June, and it then went out to a consultation. I'm satisfied that the consultation was perfectly properly carried out, and we have evidence because we check how many people are looking at what we're publishing. I'm satisfied that these were documents which were clearly known to the community that they were directed to. So that consultation was carried out and completed prior to the end of the Lancashire Schools summer term. So it was done properly. And following consultation, there were some changes made to the policy, but those were more stylistic, and they were done to make sure that it was more easily understood by parents who were reading it. And that policy was due to come back to August Cabinet in good time to be published with a statutory 12 months in advance of it coming into force. Unfortunately, August Cabinet had to be cancelled, which meant that we had no option other than to proceed to consider that policy under the urgent business process. The alternative would have caused some disruption to our schools and our parents because it would not have been ready to be published and to apply with the requisite 12-month period in advance of the next school year. So that's 2022. So unfortunately, there was a slight delay following the cancellation of Cabinet and the completion of the consultation. The time was tight, but there was a slight delay. So the implication in terms of that decision having been taken under urgent business when it was taken is that we simply didn't have time to build in a period which would allow members to call it in. And that's this is permissible under Standing Order C29. So I would like to apologise to members that we did miss that period when we could have taken the decision and provided for call-in, and to reassure members that democratic services and officers do respect the call-in period and respect it as a check and balance in the democratic process. So we are looking at ways that we can prevent this happening again, obviously, and whether it would be feasible to make sure that we share some of our urgent business proposals with members, particularly Councillor Ali and the opposition. Obviously, this one was very unusual because urgent business are very much usually the type of decision that Councillor Buckley mentioned, which is to do with the timing of grants, urgent work that needs doing to buildings, etc. It's quite unusual to have to take a decision of this nature under urgent business. But I do say that we do apologise for not building in the call-in period. That is the ramifications of the decision having been taken when it was. Unfortunately, there has been some misunderstanding amongst parents as to the nature of this decision and the policy. It has been suggested that there was no consultation, that there was no opportunity for members to debate it, and those certainly aren't true in this case. So again, I apologise. And in terms of the policy itself, perhaps Sarah Calhan or Councillor Ria could explain how it takes effect. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Very helpful to have the monitoring officer's sort of background explanation to that, and which is very welcome. And I think we all welcome the apology and the fullness of that explanation. Is there anything that Councillor Ria wants to say around the policy itself? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Ali, wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Laura, for the apology. And my concern is around the consultation and also around what was said was debated at that particular cabinet meeting. There was a discussion. Jane presented what was going to happen, and there'd be a consultation, and asked for assurances of whether that'll come back to cabinet so that there could be detailed discussion. And I was assured that it would come back to cabinet. I understand the need for urgent decisions, and that they take place on a very regular basis. But I think this has massive ramifications for hundreds of parents. We get lots of emails from parents, but on this particular issue, I've had more emails probably than I've had in 12 months on potholes on this particular issue, and the fact someone described as a sham of a consultation, that there was no consultation with some of the people who actually need to use the service or needed the service. And some of the individual cases, which I don't want to do over a live meeting, I'm happy to share that with Jane outside of this meeting, are heartbreaking because the circumstances are unique. There may be a couple of children with special educational needs, and parents are in uproar about what they're going to do and how they're going to get their children there because of this new policy. Is there an opportunity to revisit it? You talked about implementation. There is confusion. Is it being implemented from 1st of September this year, or is there a 12-month period and it's next year? If it is next year, is there not an opportunity then to revisit, if there is, revisit some of it? And I think for future as well, I think something like the SEN policy or anything around this which has major impact should go to the Education Children's Scrutiny Committee for them to give their views on it before it comes back to Cabinet. It's very difficult. It's easy for us to sit here and then call decisions in, which I don't think is appropriate unless we have to call decisions in. But the role of scrutiny, I think in this case, has also been missed, because maybe an ad hoc scrutiny committee could have been called to look at this in light of the difficulties that Laura has outlined. But I think parents need some clarification on this. If it is being implemented next year, whether there's an opportunity to look at how we can overcome some of the difficulties that are going to, some parents are going to suffer, and some of them are significant.
You can clarify the implementation time frame now. Councillor Rea?
Certainly, the reason for the urgent decision was because this is to start in 2022. So as parents are considering where they're choosing school places for, they needed that information before it goes ahead. So, sorry.
Yep.
For my own benefit, when are parents choosing the schools, which month do they start?
That is opened now.
It's open now. When
Yes.
does it close?
Sorry?
What's the closing date for it?
I'm not sure.
But I think the expectation, we have to work within our admissions code. There's an expectation that we publish it much sooner than that, to give parents time and choice to make informed choices about where they go to school.
I think, Chair, what I'm trying to say is that if it's been implemented in 2022 and it's open now, and there's a significant window in which people can apply, another month wouldn't have made a massive difference.
No.
Another month wouldn't have made a massive difference in case of the parents who are now in uproar. They're concerned about the welfare and well-being of their children.
No, I think we're confusing issues here. I'm going to ask the monitoring officer to just explain the legal.
Yes, as I said from the outset, the admissions policy and the transport policy are inextricably linked in law. So if you change the transport policy, it reopens all of the admission choices, and that creates real serious difficulties for schools in trying to manage them, and of course for us as the authority which administers the process, due to the number of schools we have to deal with. So that's why the 12-month period and the timing of the publication was so critical.
Thank you. Yeah, final one.
Just a final point on this. In the report, it also talks about savings of £200,000 from the budget, where those savings are going to come from, and what measures are going to be put in place to mitigate against what new policy that's been implemented with those parents who've got multiple children or with challenging behaviours who want to appeal against the new policy. A lot of parents who saying that they won't be able to manage to get their children to school.
Well, I'm sure that each of these cases will be dealt with on an individual basis. I mean, I'll invite Sarah to come in here, but my understanding is that they're dealt with on an individual basis, and that is part of the benefit of this 12-month period with the selection of schools and how the transport will work out.
Decisions have already been made. So it's really important to note that these changes there's only a positive change. So any current transport arrangements, there will be no change to them. The only difference in the policy is there's a mileage allowance for parents to make their own transport arrangements, and we're actually increasing the level of that mileage allowance. And the reason why the savings have already been made is because during COVID, obviously it wasn't safe for children to travel on buses because of social distancing measures. And so a number of parents had opted to transport the children themselves. So based on that, we made the decision to up the mileage change allocation. So actually the changes are all positive changes. They're the only changes that we're making to increase that mileage charge. The savings have already been made because of the reason I've just given in terms of parents choosing to transport the children during COVID rather than being reliant on expensive taxis. But we're not pushing any parents to transport the children themselves. It's purely a choice, but if they choose to, the actual allocation is greater than it used to be. And we're also paying return journeys rather than just one way. So the policy changes are only positive.
Thank you for that. So I think we've covered the full background of those urgent items now. So in terms of item 21, which is urgent business, I'm not aware of any urgent items. Which gets us on to item 22, which is the date of the next meeting. So the next meeting is on Thursday, the 7th of October, here at 2 o'clock in County Hall. We have a number of items which follow on from this. I haven't had any notice of intention objections to conducting this business in private, but I'll just ask around the room. Anyone objecting? No? In which case we will now go into private session and say goodbye to those who've been joining us on the webcast.